Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining today. My name is Sheila Miller. I invited you today to this webinar on Stratologica to go over some training of it for the Atlas portion. What I'm trying to accomplish is do 30-minute training sessions showing the different pieces of Stratologica and then in the end pulling it all together. At the end of today's session, everybody should be able to find their atlases, their lessons. They will be able to set up their class and set up student IDs. So having said that, what I'd like to start with is our Stratologica one-of-a-kind experience video, because everybody who's on this call is at a different place with Stratologica, so I want to just provide a high-level overview of what Stratologica is before we get started with the training today. So let me just play this for you and we'll get started.
Students today are easily distracted. According to ASCD's publication, Educational Leadership, the average child in the United States spends roughly 4 hours and 29 minutes watching TV, 2 hours and 31 minutes listening to music, and 1 hour and 13 minutes playing video games. And how much of their leisure time do they spend reading nonfiction? Less than 4 minutes a day. Without any knowledge of historical or current events, America's youth are entering college disconnected from the world. So how do we engage students and get them excited to learn about the world? A recent study from Everest College shows that Americans prefer to learn through hands-on methods, visual demonstrations, and collaboration with their peers. Stratologica is a product that accommodates all learning styles. For over 110 years, Herff Jones has been developing materials used in classrooms around the world. And now, we're bringing you a one-of-a-kind learning experience that provides students and educators a new and exciting way to bring historical and current events to life. After all, 55% of academic vocabulary is rooted in social studies. Stratologica's dynamic, cross-curricular environment delivers layers of content-rich learning that allows students to experience and interact with our world like never before. Much more than maps, our age-appropriate atlases include straightforward, nonfiction verbal and visual content. The nonfiction text, graphs, photographs, and illustrations help students integrate and evaluate information from multiple sources, and are a great resource to build academic background knowledge. In addition, all of our atlases now include lessons built to the Common Core. Develop critical thinking skills with the Map Viewer by showing connections using physical, political, thematic, and historical layers in a side-by-side format. Powered by Google Earth API, Stratologica will revolutionize your classroom discussions. The 21st century workforce demands more than standard teamwork. Collaboration beyond borders is crucial. With Stratologica, students can work together on collaborative projects, bringing it all together on one 3D globe in the cloud. Educators have the opportunity to connect with their peers through the Stratologica community feature. Not only can they easily publish their own content to the community, but they can also preview, rate, save, and share content created by their colleagues and the Herff Jones Nystrom team. With Stratologica, students will have the ability to see beyond themselves and explore the world like never before, while gaining the skills necessary to compete in the 21st century. Get the full experience and sign up for your free trial of Stratologica today.
Okay, well, everybody on this call does not need the free trial of Stratologica. Everybody on this call should already have their ID. If you don't have your ID and you're having trouble using it, please email me. You have my email from the invitation to join it, but it's smiller@nystromeducation.com. If you have your ID and you're having trouble logging in, if you click right here, let us help you, then we'll go ahead and our support team will reset your ID. Go ahead and log in. And your help videos come up unless you click down here on the bottom and say, don't show me this again on startup. But basically, this is one of our help features. You have different videos here to show you some of the different features and functionality you can do with Stratalogica. Your toolbar across here, your buttons will look a little different than mine, depending on what content you have loaded. All of you should have map. All of you on the call should also have atlases, since I'm going to be going over the atlases this afternoon. Charts, probably some of you do not have. That's only if you purchase the licenses. Outline maps you should have, and library is your library. Your blue desktop here will look a little different. This is where you'll be managing your classrooms. We will get into doing that after we do the atlases. If you need to test your system, for some reason you're having trouble, this is your first start point. Go ahead and click Test Your System, and it runs just a little auto diagnostic. I'll let you know if you're missing anything that you need to have plugged in. And it'll finish checking mine, and it should say I have everything. And there it goes. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a minute. We'll go through the atlases. A reminder that Stratalogica is also available on an iPad. The app is free, and you would use your same user ID and password that you use to access Stratalogica here on the desktop. It's a very easy app. Most of the functionality is available on it as here. Definitely with the atlases, everything we can do on the atlases here, you can do on your iPad. So let's take a look at the elementary atlases. Up on the screen right now is our Block Buddy Atlas. This is our first grade atlas. Pretty much all of the elementary atlases are laid out the same way. They are matched up with our Exploring Where and Why hands-on program. They'll start with a question at the top of the page, and then depending on the grade level, there'll be some text and pictures, but they all start with a question along at the top. So that's just kind of an overview of that elementary first grade. Let's take a look at the second grade atlas, and I'll show you some additional functionality. This is a grade 2 atlas. To navigate your atlases, you can type page number right up here if you know your page number, and you can go right to it. So that's one of the things that you need to know to navigate. If you have more than one atlas, this stack of papers, when I click it, brings up all my atlases. This right here will be associated with every atlas. It's a little book and pencil. These are your lessons. Tips are kind of how to use the atlas. The lessons, when you click on your lessons, you have two additional headers here. It'll say students and it'll say teachers. Obviously, the teacher has answers on it. The students does not. All of our elementary atlases have 15 Common Core lessons associated with the atlas. And then after the first 15 Common Core lessons are specific activities for the atlas based on the different topics covered by the atlas. So let me go ahead and pull up third grade atlas. I want to give you an idea of the different atlases at each of the grade levels. They do build on each other. Just go to like page and take a look. And again, as you can see, like the other elementary atlases, starts off with a question, a little bit more text because we're on third grade. And I click here and I go to my lessons. And again, my first 15 are going to be Common Core. And so let's take a look at what does that look like. So this one is writing informative text. And this would be something the students can do. You know, if you set up your class and your student IDs, the students can do these lessons at home. Once you have these lessons pulled up, they can be saved or they can be printed. So you can do that as well on your desktop. If you wanted to do this as a written activity in class, you could save it or print it out. It'll save to a PDF for you. So let's go back to our third grade atlas and we'll close out of third grade, and let's take a look at our fourth grade atlas, which is our Map and Globe Skills program. This is where we start actually getting involved with longitude, latitude, different regions. And we'll go over here, and again you'll see your lessons are laid out. First 15 are going to be Common Core. And the next are going to be, after the first 15, we're going to get into activities that go back to the map. So let's just look at number 5. And here's the answers because I have the teacher's edition. What are the continents notions? Again, you can assign this as a homework assignment to extend out your classroom learning. The students can access it from their desktop at home or their iPad. It can be saved as a PDF or it can be printed out. Again, the same functionality you would have, the students have. Let me go back over here and let's take a look at our 5th grade atlas. 5th grade atlas is a little bit more detailed than the 1st through 4th. This is where we're starting to get into history, and you'll see across the top we'll have timelines at the beginning of each of the chapters, and there's maps in here for the students to follow along with the learning. And again, though, once we go here and we go to lessons, the first 15 are again going to be Common Core. But now these are going to be a little bit more complex than what we were looking at before. So let's take a look at what the writing and narrative entails here. And see, now it's going to detail the students back to the atlas, so they're using that to write their paper. This is actually a 2-part activity for the students. But again, it can be saved and it can be printed. This allows you to have the students work on it in the classroom or extend out the classroom to home. And again, we also have activities that are specific to the pages in the atlas with the answers, because obviously it's the teacher's version. I'll close a couple of these down as we do it, and we'll go back. One of the other features I would like to show you before we move to our upper elementary is our zoom feature over here. So you can zoom in. So if I really want to talk about the North American population in 1492, I can highlight this. If you do not have a smartboard, you just got one with Stratalogica. We now can concentrate the students to talking about this area, and you can erase it, or you can have the students come up and mark something off that you would like them to. So again, you have your interactive whiteboard with the toolbox here on Stratalogica, and that toolbox is with all the atlases. And let's go ahead. So there's no questions on the elementary atlases. I'm going to start going into some of our upper elementary. I'm going to show you our World Atlas first. Pull that up. And this is where we're doing a little bit deeper dive on geography with our World Atlas program. I find that this works well for 6th grade and up, depending on where your students are with their geography. What this is going to start helping students with, let's show you some of the lessons over here. Of course, the first 15 are still Common Core. So you can see now we're talking about writing arguments, so it's a little bit more detailed for the students and more engaging. And then you can see by some of these topics, it's going to talk about certain basic map skills and continents, but then as it gets a little further, it's going to start talking specifically about different characteristics in different regions. Let me just pull up an example here. Let me go to 170, because the students are going to start talking about, with this atlas, problems that are affecting the rest of the world. Oops, sorry, 17. Actually, 24. So here's focus on population. So again, if I wanted to highlight a particular area that we're talking about, I can zoom in or zoom out. And again, you've got your interactive board here. But I just wanted to show you how this atlas talks about population and starts making inferences to different areas of the world and how population lays out across the world, and what that means to different regions. And now if we go to our upper world atlas, which is our desk atlas, this is more for our high school level learners. And then again, you've got your lessons here. Your first 15 are Common Core. Again, writing argument. This is going to be a little bit more complicated than the last one because it's, again, for high school level. What I want to show you is how population is discussed in this book. 170. If we take a look at page 170, there's a population discussion after the students go through an analysis of Asia, Southeastern Asia, and so Eastern Asia, and they go through this piece so they have a good understanding of that region, and then it gets into talking about, okay, well, how can population growth be controlled? Is it government regulation? Is it through education of an area? So now you've brought that population discussion to a whole different critical thinking level with the students where they're doing some real world problem solving and having some meaningful discussions around it. So that's just an overview of the desk atlas. And again, like the others, I had shown you it has Common Core, and then it also has lessons specific to the different regions that are covered in the, so here you go, Asia's Human Geography. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about Asia here. Again, setting the stage for the conversation on growth population. And we go back in. And let's talk about our history atlases. So pretty much World Atlas and the Desk Atlas cover geography, but you can see from the two different atlases they cover it in a different scope. Let's start with our U.S. History Atlas. There's a couple of different features that I want to show you that are different in the history atlases as opposed to our elementary atlases. And you'll see as we go through it, we've got timeline across the top of each of the beginnings. You again will have your first 15 lessons that are Common Core, and then the remaining activities are going to be tied to specific pages in the atlas itself. I'm going to have the teacher version. They may be saved or they may be printed out. So we'll go back to the U.S. history, close that out. There is another feature in the history atlases. We have primary source documents in each of these atlases. Once you get to the primary source, you may print them or save them. And so let's just take a look at this right here. Let me zoom in a little to make sure everybody can see it. See these little icons right here with the mouse? It says usatlas.com. If you have our traditional printed atlas, you would have to log on to that website and pull up the primary source document. Here, we just click, and there's our nuclear arms race. And then we can click right here. And we have John F. Kennedy's speech at the Berlin Wall. And I wanted to show you those two items because the primary source documents may be a graph, maybe a picture of the time period, or it's an actual, in this case, a document, this speech President Kennedy gave. And again, you can save it or print it out. So that is one of the other features. I'm going to go over here now and pull up our World History Atlas, which is laid out basically the same way as our U.S. History Atlas. We have First 15 lessons, all tied to the Common Core. And look, here we go, analyzing primary source and secondary sources. Very important. And you're able to do that all from the Stratalogica program because you can get to your primary sources from here. And then again, you have your activities that are tied specifically to this atlas. And let's take a look at some of the primary source documents that you would find in the World Atlas. And again, it's set up like the U.S. History Atlas. I'll zoom in so you can see it better. A little too far zoom out a little bit. And click right here. And the Analects of Confucius can be printed out. You can do this as a separate lesson or incorporate it to the conversation that you're having on this. But again, it's 3 pages, and it's your primary source documents. That pretty much covers our Atlas programs. You want to, whenever you're in Stratalogica, to go home, you want to click on this flag right here. I'm going to click out. I have a lot of these open because we were sitting here talking about them. So let me just click those close and then back at Stratalogica. Okay, so since we've covered the atlases and there weren't questions on the atlases, let's go ahead and do a class and student ID setup. I'm going to go in a little bit differently because my desktop isn't set up like yours, but you would go into managing your classes. Mine will just take a little bit longer to come up. And I'll let you, now, when you go in, yours will look like this gentleman. So here's his licenses for this teacher. And at this point, he doesn't have any classes. But I'm going to show you how you add classes. So when you go into your admin part, this is what you should be looking at. Go over here, add class, and we're going to just call this practice, add class. And then once you have your classes added here, you can go in and you add a student. Before I add a student, I want to help you figure out how you want to add students. If you're at the elementary level, and you're probably not going to be collecting homework through Stratalogica, you're probably going to just use it maybe as a tool for the students to use within the class, or occasionally when you want them to look something up at home, what you might want to do is create just like 20 blank student IDs. And what I mean by that is maybe the first name is, social studies, and the username is history with the password of password. Don't make it too difficult if it doesn't have to exactly be tied to every student. That way you don't have to keep track of everything. So again, it could be like student 1, student 2. It could be username, password could be history, could be password, whatever you're comfortable with. And then this way you have the same 20 student ID year over year too at the elementary level. Some of the other things I've seen teachers use is the student ID or lunch ID. If you have a school ID or lunch ID, you can use that if you want your elementary students or middle school students to have their own ID, but you don't want to have this cumbersome task of having to manage the IDs for the students. If you're got more than a couple of students, like more than 20, and you need some assistance, like at the middle school and high school level, where you have hundreds of students you're trying to load up, set up your classes, and then you can send us the information, and we can set it up for you off of a spreadsheet. But you would go in and you'd put in the student's name, and then you would put in, you don't have to do an email, so skip that. We are not trying to collect email addresses on students, nor do we expect you to be using this to communicate with your students. So we'll just put in, this is going to be student 1, and my password will be 3. Oh, student's already in use. How about that? So we'll call it student 30. Somebody else is already using my system. We'll just call it students maybe. And now my student has been added. And your student list would be here. But I'm going to go ahead and remove him because I'm sure the teacher doesn't want to have my blank student. And then you would go back to home right here. So any questions on how to set up your class or how to set up your student ID? If you're ever stuck, you come down here, here's our email address and our 800 number. Keep in mind when you call our 800 number, our technical and client support staff are located in California, so you'll have a better chance of getting them in the afternoon hours towards the end of school if you're on East Coast time. Well, I promised to give you enough information in 30 minutes or less to do atlases and set up student IDs, and I think I've accomplished that today. Thank you for joining, and I will let you know when we have future ones. Our next program will be on MAPS. Thank you and have a great afternoon.